I've got text number 58 on the board, but I think Shastra went through it yesterday, but we'll just go through it again today. This is a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 18, Text 12. Yasyasti Bhakta Bhagavati Akinchana Savai Gunas Tatra Samasate Sura Harava Bhaktasya Kuto Mahadguna Manoratin Sati Davato Bahai Yasyasti Bhakti Bhagavata Kinchana Savai Gunas Tatra Samasate Sura Harava Bhaktasya Kuto Mahadguna Manoratena Sati Davato Bahi Yasya, one who, Asti, has, Bhakti, devotional service, Bhagavati, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Akinchana, without motive, Savai, all, Gunai, qualities, Tatra, there, Samasati, become manifested. Sura, with all the demigods. Haru, unto the Supreme Personality. Abhaktasya, one who is not a devotee. Kuta, where? Mahat Guna, high qualities. Manaratena, concoction. Asati, the material existence. Davataha, run on. Bahi, externally. Translation. And one who has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna, all the good qualities of Krishna and the demigods are consistently manifested. However, one who has no devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no good qualifications because he is engaged by mental concoction and material existence, which is the external feature of the Lord. Text number 59. Pandita Gosanera Shishya Ananta Acharya Krishna Premaya Tanu Udara Sava Arya. Translation. Ananta Acharya was a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit. His body was always absorbed in love of Godhead. He was magnanimous and advanced in all respects. Text number 60. Tanhara Ananta Guna Ke Karu Prakasha Tanra Priya Shishya Inha Pandita Haridas. Translation. Ananta Acharya was a reservoir of all good qualities. No one can estimate how great he was. Pandit Haridas was his beloved disciple. Purport. Sri Ananta Acharya is one of the eternal associates of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Previously, during the advent of Lord Krishna, Ananta Acharya was Sudevi, one of the 8 gopis. This is stated in the Gaura Ganadesha Deepika, verse 165 as follows. Ananta Acharya Goswami Yasudevi Pura Braje. Quote, Ananta Acharya Goswami was formerly Sudevi Gopi in Braja, Vrindavan. End of quote. In Jagannath Puri or Purushottama Kshetra, there is a monastery known as Ganga Mata Mat that was established by Ananta Acharya. In the disciplic succession of the Ganga Mata Mat, he is known as Vinod Manjari. One of his disciples was Haridas Pandit Goswami, who was also known as Sri Raghu Gopala and as Sri Rasa Manjari. His disciple Lakshmi Priya was the maternal aunt of Gangamata, a princess who was the daughter of the king of Putiya. Gangamata brought a deity of the name Sri Rasika Rai from Krishna Mishra of Jaipur and installed him in the house of Sarvabhauma and Jagannath Puri. The disciple in the 5th generation after Sri Ananta Acharya was Sri Vanamali. In the 6th generation, Sri Bhagavan Das, who was a Bengali. In the 7th generation, Madhusudana Das, who was an Oriya. In the 8th generation, Nilambar Das. In the 9th generation, Sri Narottam Das. In the 10th generation, Pitambara Das. And in the 11th generation, Sri Madhava Das. The disciple in the 12th generation is presently in charge of the Ganga Mata monastery. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Trimanandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Umlitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so this section of the Chaitanya Caritamrita is about Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explaining why he wrote the Chaitanya Caritamrita. So from text 44 to text number 80, he's elaborating on the reasons why, and one of the primary reasons is that he was asked to do that by some of the prominent Vaishnavas that were in Vrindavan at the time. So he was talking in this verse about Ananta Acharya and Pandit Haridas, who were prominent Vaishnava pundits and spiritual masters in Vrindavan at the time. So it's pretty ecstatic when you I was saying to Chara this morning that when you give Chaitanya Caritamrita classes, that it opens up little doors of nectar, little avenues of nectar. You find all these personalities and pastime places. So we can go a bit further into looking into who some of these personalities are that are mentioned: Ananta Acharya, Pandit Haridas, and also especially Ganga Mata, who is also known as Sachi Devi, a very ecstatic personality. So onwards. Okay, so Sri Ananta Acharya, as Prabhupada mentions in his purport, was actually a personality directly from the spiritual world, one of the Astasakis, Sudevi. So I did a little bit of research on who Ananta Acharya was, and I can read a little bit about Ananta Acharya. So Sri Ananta Acharya was one of the dearest followers of Sri Advaita Acharya. Sri Advaita is one of the major branches to have risen out of Sri Chaitanya's desire tree of devotional service. Ananta Acharya is the 9th expansion to have originated out of Lord Advaita's branch. It has been mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in his purport that though Sri Ananta was initially a follower of Advaita Prabhu, he later on became a prominent devotee of Gadadhar Pandit. Chaitanya Caritamrita exclaims that the body of Ananta Acharya has always been overwhelmed by the ecstasy of Krishna Prem. He was a reservoir of all good qualities, and he was advanced in all respects. Not much is mentioned about Sri Ananta Acharya, but from Chaitanya Caritamrita we come to know that he had a dear disciple named Pandit Haridas, not to be confused with Haridas Thakur, so they're different personalities, who had been the chief servitor at Sri Radha Govindaji Temple in Vrindavan. Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj highly glorifies the Vaishnava qualities of Sri Haridas Pandit. In the Adi-lila of the Chaitanya Caritamrita, which is the section we're up to now, Srila Krishnadas recalls that Haridas Pandit was one of the devotees who had requested him to compose Chaitanya Caritamrita, the exalted biographical work on Lord Chaitanya's life and teachings. The Gaudiya Treasures of Bengal has covered the pastimes of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in another article. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions in his Anubhas that Sri Ananta Acharya is an eternal associate of the Supreme Lord Sudevi, one of the 8 principal gopis of Vrindavan, who had incarnated as Sri Ananta Acharya in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house in Jagannath Puri is today known by the name Ganga Mata Mat. This Mat monastery was originally established by Sri Ananta Acharya. Ganga Mata, the princess of Puntia, located in Rajshali district in the present-day Bangladesh, abandoned her home and opulence in order to accept initiation in Ananta Acharya's line of disciplic succession. So we'll read a little bit more about her in a short while. So Ananta Acharya had established his Shripat at Barupura. I think Shripat just means like his monastery as well. So it's the pictures you can see there on the PowerPoint. On the left-hand side is actually the Samadhi of Anantaracharya. I think it says Pushpa Samadhi, which is not far outside of Calcutta, this area. And the deities in the middle are the Gaurnatai deities that were actually worshipped by Anantaracharya. So you can have a nice darshan of, seeing as we can't go to India, we have a nice darshan of Anantaracharya and his deities. And you can still visit this place now. So Sri Mahaprabhu had visited his residence and had stayed for the night here in Barupura while he was en route to Jagannath Puri. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually stayed in this spot here with Anantaracharya, and Anantaracharya had kirtan and some nice association with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Caitanya Bhagavat exclaims how Anantaracharya was supremely fortunate to host the Lord of Vaikuntha himself at his house. It's also mentioned herein that Sri Anantaracharya was a devotee of the highest order. He was a Param Sadhu. We can have the great fortune of taking darshan of Sri Anantaracharya's worshipful deities and his Pushpa Samadhi here in his Shripat. When you visit this place, you can find the local devotees who are very, very cooperative and friendly. The Dharma is currently being nicely managed and maintained by the devotees at Patbari Ashram. The building is properly renovated and is presently 3 stories high. The worshipful Gaurnatai deities of Sri Anantaracharya and his Pushpa Samadhi are located on the 1st floor itself. There is also other deities there too, of Jagannath Baladev and Subhadra Devi. So Anantaracharya is being also discussed in this section of the Chaitanya Caritamrita as being a wonderful devotee with wonderful qualities, and as mentioned, he was Sudevi in the Krishna Lila, so a very exalted personality. So he was a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit, and he also initiated Pandit Haridas, who we're hearing a little bit more about today in the Chaitanya Caritamrita. And Pandit Haridas was the head priest of the Govindadev Temple in Vrindavan, which is one of the main primary temples in Vrindavan. So there's some, I couldn't actually find any images of Pandit Haridas. I had a pretty good look and I just couldn't find any pictures, or couldn't find a picture of his samadhi. But I did explain there are, I think near Govindadev Temple, there are 64 different samadhis of different Vaishnava personalities, and I'm pretty sure that's where his samadhi would be, near Govindadev Temple, seeing that he was so closely affiliated with Govindadev. So Pandit Haridas was also a very, very exalted personality, and in these verses we're hearing about some of his wonderful qualities that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is talking about. And Pandit Haridas was obviously one of the devotees who inspired Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami to write the Chaitanya Caritamrita, and it also elaborates in the coming verses about some of the other great Vaishnava personalities who were residing in Vrindavan at the time, who were encouraging Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami to write the Chaitanya Caritamrita. It's explained that Haridas Pandit was a great devotee of Lord Nityananda and Lord Caitanya, and he would recite the Chaitanya Bhagavat written by Vrindavan Das Thakur, and all the devotees in Vrindavan would come to hear from Pandit Haridas as he gave his discourses about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. It is explained that the Chaitanya Bhagavat only covered the earlier pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so there wasn't a great record of some of his later pastimes, so all the devotees in Vrindavan were very eager to hear about the later pastimes, or the Adi-lila of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so which is why they were requesting Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami to write this Chaitanya Caritamrita. So, yeah, beautiful temple, the Govindadev Temple. I'm sure most of you have been there before. It used to be taller than that. I think it had another 3 or 4 stories above it. Unfortunately, Aurangzeb destroyed like the top 4 levels apparently. So it used to be bigger than what it is now. It's a very, very beautiful temple when you go to Vrindavan and you can visit Govindadev. The original deities were removed though when the Muslims invaded Vrindavan, so the original Govinda is no longer here. I think he was moved to Jaipur in Rajasthan, where a lot of the original Vrindavan deities were taken to. So, in this purport from today, we were hearing about sorry, just get my page, here we are. We're hearing about Gangamata, who became a disciple of Pandit Haridas. And she's a very, very famous Vaishnavi. I don't know if most of you are familiar or have heard of Gangamata at all, or you know about her story or her pastimes. It's pretty ecstatic. So I thought we could elaborate a bit more on Gangamata, seeing as her name was brought up in the today's purport. She was also known as Sachi Devi. So she's a very, very ecstatic Vaishnavi, a very exalted personality. So we can hear a bit more about Gangamata. So she appeared in the Christian year of 1601 and was the daughter of a king. So she was a princess. The king was Naresh Narayan. So from her early childhood, Sachi was a great devotee of Krishna, and she became also very learned. She was very, very highly educated, was absorbed in grammar and poetry, and became very expert in those as well. And became fully immersed in studying the Vaishnava scriptures. Even as a young girl, she was fascinated with Krishna consciousness, and when she became older, she was also very beautiful, very attractive. So all the young boys were charmed by her beauty. But within Sachi's mind, she wasn't attracted to any of the young men, no matter how handsome or rich they were, because her mind was always filled with thoughts of Krishna. She was so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that she wasn't interested in marriage. And of course, we're going back hundreds of years ago, and the culture back then was that girls were married at a young age, and like it was a big headache for the parents if they weren't married off. It's a little bit different now, but back then that was just the culture. So you can imagine that she said to her parents that, "I will not marry a mortal man born of this world of death." So she was fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Well, obviously wasn't on the bodily conception of life at all. So even though the king and queen wanted to marry her off, she just didn't want to do it. So you can imagine their headache, and they passed away eventually, and she was unwed. And because her parents were the king and the queen, she took on some of the responsibilities of governing the province that they were in the jurisdiction of. So for a while she did this, and then because obviously she was quite renounced, she lost interest in fulfilling that role of being in an administrative position. And so she left, and she went off and went to Jagannath Puri, and then spent some time in Jagannath Puri and was searching out a spiritual master. And she obviously had some sangha with devotees in Jagannath Puri, but then she set out to Vrindavan. So when she came to Vrindavan, at the time Pandit Haridas was giving discourses on the Caitanya Bhagavat in the Govindadev temple. So she met Pandit Haridas and became very, very inspired by him, and took shelter of Pandit Haridas. And she requested that she can take initiation from him, become his disciple. But because Pandit Haridas knew that she had come from a royal family, he wasn't sure that if she was ready to be initiated in Vrindavan, become a Vaishnava. So he tested her. Actually, he tested her. It says that the guru will test the disciple. So he said to her that it wouldn't be possible for the daughter of a king to practice the renunciation that she required in order to serve the Lord in Braj. But she understood that this was just a test. So she became a renunciate actually, and began practicing Madhukari, where you become a beggar basically. So you can imagine she came from a royal family with opulences and wealth and all the trappings that come along with it, but she threw it all away, got rid of it, adorned the rags of a renunciate, and began practicing Madhukari around Vrindavan, begging for food and for water and for her sustenance actually. So what Pandit Haridas had said to her is, if you can give up shyness, pride and fear and beg from door to door, then you'll be qualified to receive my mercy. So upon hearing this, she became very, very happy and quite gladly took up this lifestyle of being a renunciate, begging from door to door in Vrindavan. And it's explained that she did great austerities and penances while she was living there, and she became very, emaciated, lost a lot of weight, very, very thin, because she just wasn't eating properly. But even though she had lost weight, she still continued with her service, bathing in the Yamuna, would do service at Govinda Dev Temple, go on parikram every day, attend ceremonies and hear discussions about Krishna. So fully absorbed in renunciation and austerities and fully absorbed in her Krishna consciousness. So Haridas Pandit noted this and became very happy, and he said to her that although you are the daughter of a king, the exertion with which you have worshipped Sri Krishna and the degree of renunciation you have shown have pleased me very much. And he initiated her in the Govinda Dev Temple. So it says that she was initiated into the Radha Krishna mantra by Haridas Pandit Goswami. Having received the 18-syllable mantra, Sachi became completely imbued with love of Krishna. Though she was very destitute, she began to serve Sri Guru and Govinda with intense devotion. Every day she would listen to her Guru, Pandit Haridas, explain the Shastras. Within a short time she became quite conversant in the literature of the Goswamis, and this was very pleasing to everyone. So at the same time, another disciple of Pandit Haridas, her name was Lakshmi Priya, who was also apparently Sachi's maternal aunt. So she was her aunt. She was also came to Vrindavan, and she was also a very, very exalted Vaishnavi. It explained that Lakshmi Priya used to chant 3 lakhs of holy names every day. Do you know how many rounds that is? 3 lakhs.
300,000, isn't it?
It's 192 rounds. So yeah, names, 192 rounds. So obviously pretty special personality. I get pretty enthused if I chant an extra 2 or 3 rounds, but she's doing like 192 rounds every day. Kind of shows us where we're at. So Pandit Haridas instructed Sachi to associate with Lakshmi Priya and reside at Radha Kund. So they had a lot of Sangha together at Radha Kund, and every day they would circumambulate Govardhan Hill every day. So she obviously became very, very developed in a Krishna consciousness and very, very fixed on very high levels of bhava and prema. So after a few years of residing in Vrindavan, Haridas Pandit instructed Sachi to go back to Jagannath Puri to preach the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And he also instructed her to protect and revive the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, which was lying in ruins. So at this point in time, most of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates had all left or gone back to the spiritual world, had ended their earthly pastimes. So following instructions of her spiritual master, Sachi went to Jagannath Puri and began residing in the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And explained that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house was very dilapidated at that time. There was no one living there. The only thing that was in there was the Damodar Shila that had been worshipped by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So she resumed the regular worship of the Shalagram Shila, and every day she would begin reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam. And because she was so learned and so scholarly, many, many people became attracted to hearing her discourses on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this included also the king of Jagannath Puri, whose name was Mukunda Dev, also became attracted to hearing her discourses about the Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Lila. So she became quite well known in Jagannath Puri. So there's some very famous pastimes of Satyamata or Gangamata in Jagannath Puri. So this is the images here of the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. I don't know if some of you may have been there when you have been to Jagannath Puri. Anyone been there? I was there with Pavan Lochan a couple of years ago. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was an associate of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu. It's explained that when Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu came to Jagannath Puri, he was in such ecstasy in the Jagannath Mandir that he had passed out and fainted. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya took Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu back to his place of residence here. If you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a picture of a tunnel there. And it's explained that this tunnel from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house would connect to the Jagannath Temple, and that's how Jagannath Prasadam would be distributed to his house. It's also explained that the temple also would lead out to the ocean as well. That was reading an article in an Indian newspaper how devotees, probably ISKCON devotees, were making their way into the tunnel. You're not supposed to go in there. So the article was complaining about these devotees discovered the tunnel and they were making their way through, and apparently it was blocked. It's blocked halfway through. And the article was just saying that these foreign devotees it was a dangerous tunnel to go into, so they shouldn't do it. So, Hare Krishnas find our way into these things, don't we? Looking for the nectar, go into the tunnel. But this tunnel's still there. And I think, just from memory, that Sanatani Mataji, if you know Sanatani, her father is involved with the management of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house. I'm pretty sure it was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house. I know he's involved in management of a temple there, but I'm pretty sure this is the one. But to a degree, it's explained that when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya brought Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu back into his house, if you can see on the left-hand side there, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was an impersonalist, a Mayavadi at the time, and he was reciting Vedanta Sutra, I think it was, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listened to it for a week, and then after finishing it said, I understand the Vedanta Sutra, but I don't understand your explanation of the Vedanta Sutra. And then he began explaining the Atmaram verse, like different interpretations of the Atmaram verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And also he manifested the Sadbhuj form, the six-arm form. So there's a murti there in Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house on the left-hand side of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu manifesting this Sadbhuj form, the six-arm form. So lots of nice pastimes took place here, and this is where Sachimata was residing, and she began to obviously worship the Damodar Shila, which is apparently still there. This Damodar Shila of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is still there in this house today. So it's quite nicely looked after. You can see the courtyard there with nice murals and paintings with Lord Chaitanya's pastimes are there as well. So it's a nice place. It's quite quiet when you go there too, so it's quite a nice place to meditate and chant Hare Krishna. It's next to the Sweta Ganga, which is a bathing tank in Jagannath Puri. So this is how Sachi became known as Ganga Mata Goswamini. So Sachi's fame as an accomplished lecturer on the Shastras began to spread far and wide. One day the King Mukunda Dev came to hear her class. He was very pleased to hear such authoritative conclusions coming from the mouth of this exalted devotee. So in his mind he wanted to present something to her, and that night the king had a dream in which Lord Jagannath appeared to him and said, "You should offer the place known as Sweta Ganga to Sachi." So early the next morning the king came to see her, and Sachi very meekly offered him a seat and inquired as to the purpose of the visit. The king related to her the dream of Lord Jagannath and requested her to accept the piece of land adjacent to Sweta Ganga. Sachi, however, was not interested in acquiring property. She declined the offer, but the king insisted she accept his royal grant of land, and finally she agreed after considering that it was, after all, the order of Lord Jagannath. Most pleased he could render her some service, the king presented her with a deed to the parcel of land. So after the royal grant of the land to Sachi, rumours began circulating around Jagannath Puri that she was actually from a royal dynasty, that she was formerly a princess. So some of her Vaishnavi friends invited her to go to bathe in the Ganga during Maha Varuni, which is an auspicious day for bathing in the Ganga. But she decided that she didn't want to go because it means she had to leave Jagannath Puri to go to the Ganga to bathe, and she saw herself following the order of her spiritual master, Pandit Haridas. She saw herself as like a Kshetra sannyas, that was her abode of worship, just like Gadadhar Pandit. He didn't leave Jagannath Puri because that was his Kshetra. He was a Kshetra sannyasi, so he never left Jagannath Puri. So she was in the same consciousness that her guru had ordered her to go there, so she didn't want to leave. So that night, after she had told her friends that she wasn't going to go with them to the Ganga, Jagannath appeared to her in a dream and said, "Sachi, don't worry. On the day of Mahavaruni, you should bathe in the Sweta Ganga. Ganga Devi herself will personally come to join you there." So after hearing this dream and seeing this dream, Sachi was very, very ecstatic. And when the day of the Varuni bath arrived, in the middle of the night, Sachi went to the Sweta Ganga alone. As she entered into the water, a strong current suddenly gripped her and carried her inside the Jagannath Mandir, which was now flooded, much to her amazement, by the sacred water of the Ganges. So you can imagine that. You're taking bath in a holy theatre, and suddenly you appear in the Jagannath Mandir. So this is what happened to her. So we'll continue on. So it's explained that when she was inside the Jagannath Mandir, she saw thousands and thousands of the residents of Sri Kshetra taking their baths. A great uproar resounded in all directions from the recitation of prayers and hymns. In the midst of these festivities, Sachi very religiously performed the Varuni bath in the water of the Ganga. So it's like she was actually transported to that spot where everyone was bathing in the Ganga. So these are one of the mystical pastimes that take place in Jagannath Puri. So hearing the sound of what seemed to be a large crowd of people within the temple, the watchmen outside and the guards hurried to the temple superintendent, who in turn informed the king. The king ordered them to enter the temple to investigate. To the astonishment of everyone, they found Sri Sachi Devi, the reciter of the Bhagavatam, standing there alone. So it's explained that they had normal mundane vision, so they couldn't see these pastimes taking place. They just didn't have the transcendental vision to see it. So the priests of the temple surmised she must have broken into the temple in order to steal the ornaments of Lord Jagannath. You criminal thief. But others present felt it was impossible for her to have done this. There must be some mystery behind it all, they said, so it was decided to confine her for trial and judgment. So they actually locked her up. Locked her away. So Sachi Devi didn't mind and very blissfully continued to chant the holy name. Meanwhile, the king had a dream in which Lord Jagannath very angrily told him, "You should immediately release Sachi. I personally caused the Ganga to flow from my very own foot. It was this that brought her into the temple, so that she could take bath on this auspicious day. If you're concerned for the welfare of your subjects and your own good fortune, then along with the temple priests, you'd better go and beg forgiveness at her feet and request to become her disciples." So this is the king of Puri has been told to become a disciple of Sachi Mata. So who says that ladies can't be gurus? After seeing this dream, the king awoke in a very worried state. He quickly completed his morning bath and immediately called for the priests. They went to the place of Sachi's confinement. The king opened the door and fell down at her lotus feet to offer his obeisances. He very humbly begged for her forgiveness and submitted Lord Jagannath's instructions that he become her disciple. Seeing the wonderful behaviour of the king, she placed her hand on his head that he might be benedicted. On the next auspicious day, she initiated the king with the Radha Krishna, Hare Krishna mantra. Many of the priests also accepted the shelter of her lotus feet at this time. From that day, she became known as Sri Ganga Mata Goswamini Jai, Sri Ganga Mata Ki Jai. So after this, the king wanted to give some dakshin to Guru dakshin to Ganga Mata, and she said that she only wanted the king to attain pure devotion and love of Lord Krishna's lotus feet. "I'm not qualified to accept anything more than this," she told him, but the king repeatedly entreated her to accept something from him as Guru dakshin. Finally, for the purpose of serving the Vaishnava, she agreed. Thereafter, daily 2 pots of Mahaprasadam, 1 pot of vegetables, and a remnant of Lord Jagannath's cloth and some paisa were sent to the ashram each day and offered to her. And this service is still observed today, apparently. That they still observe this today. They take these articles to Ganga Mata's Samadhi, which is next to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house. So that was one of the wonderful pastimes of Ganga Mata and how she became known as Ganga Mata. There's another famous pastime with her involving a deity called Rasika Roy, which is mentioned in the purport today actually. A deity of the name Sri Rasika Roy from Krishna Mishra of Jaipur came to Puri. So I'll give a brief explanation of how that happened. That there was a family in the town of Jaipur in Rajasthan who were looking after this deity called Rasika Roy, but apparently they'd made offences, and so a lot of his family had died and passed away, so there was no one to continue the worship of this particular deity. So Lord Jagannath appeared to this Brahmana in the dream and told him that the service of Sri Rasika Roy, who is present in your house, is not being conducted properly. You should go straight away to bring him here to Jagannath Puri and deliver him to Sri Gangamata, who resides on the banks of Sweta Ganga, otherwise some misfortune will befall you. So immediately this Brahmana carried this deity of Rasika Roy to, I think that was the next slide. Sorry we're jumping here, but that's the Sweta Ganga there, and that pastime we're talking about. This is the Sweta Ganga where Gangamata bathed in when she was taken to the Jagannath Temple. So you can still bathe here today actually, still there in Jagannath Puri. It's a wonderful thing, all these pastime places are still present. So after the Brahmana had this dream of Jagannath, he carried this deity into Jagannath Puri, and he found Sachimata. And he said to her, he presented himself to Gangamata and said, explained to her, I'm simply a beggar, or he explained that he must take over the worship of this Rasika Roy deity, but she said to him, I'm simply a beggar, I eat only by begging at a few houses each day. How can I serve this wonderful deity? You better take your deity with you, please don't take me as an offender. So the Brahmana didn't know what to do because he'd had the dream. Jagannath had come and said, take Rasika Roy to this Gangamata, and now she's rejecting. So what did he do? He dumped the deity in the Tulsi garden and made a run for it. He took off, left this Rasika Roy deity in the Tulsi garden next to Sarvan Bhattacharya's house, and he took off. And that night, Jagannath appeared to her in the dream and said, I've come here to accept your service, and that Brahmana has left me in the Tulsi garden and left this place. I haven't eaten anything for a whole day. Please feed me. So the deity's a person, the deity's a real personality. So Gangamata was struck with wonder. Supreme Lord had appeared, and she's thinking, well, he's come to me in a dream and wants me to feed him, so I must feed him, I must serve him that way. So she became very ecstatic and then found the deity and cooked a wonderful offering for him, and then she installed him in Sarvan Bhattacharya's house. And it's explained that she would do 12 hours of service every day to this form of the Lord, Rasika Roy. 12 hours she would be serving every day. Quite phenomenal. So she would make varieties of vegetables, do aarti, make preps, so many wonderful services that she would do for this Rasika Roy deity. So it's explained that when she became older, she realised that her standard of worship was slipping, because she just wasn't able to, because of her age, wasn't able to render such nice service for so many hours. So Rasika Roy appeared to her in a dream and said, I'm very pleased with the service. You shouldn't lament. For a few more days you should continue to serve me. Some days passed, but again she told me she didn't want to remain any longer. She wanted to give up her body. She thought, what's the use of my body? I can't do service anymore. So she wanted to give it up. So Rasika Roy appeared to her in a dream and said, all right, don't worry anymore. After handing over my service to one of your qualified disciples, you should come join me in my eternal abode. So it's explained that she, and it's also in the purport today, that she had another disciple, Vanamali, who was also mentioned in today's purport. And Vanamali took over this worship of the Rasika Roy in Sarvan Bhattacharya's house. And this deity is still there today, of Rasika Roy in Sarvan Bhattacharya's house, so you can take darshan of it. I couldn't find any photos. I had a good look, but wasn't able to find any photos of Rasika Roy, unfortunately. So, but apparently this form of the Lord is still worshipped there, along with the Damodar Shalagram Shila of Sarvan Bhattacharya, and there's other deities there as well. So this is the Samadhi of Sarvan Bhattacharya and Gangamata. So which is next to Sarvan Bhattacharya's house. So you can obviously take darshan, Ganga Mata and Sarvabhaumacharya. As discussed before, that these samadhis, the personality is present there, so we can pray to these personalities to make spiritual advancement and beg for their mercy. That's how we make advancement in Krishna consciousness, is through asking for the mercy, praying and begging for the mercy of the devotees. Whether they're present or not present, they can still give you their mercy. So she was a great, powerful guru within our sampradaya. So there's a nice conclusion here that devotees of Krishna may be born in any race, in any caste, or indeed either sex. They are still considered to be the best of human beings and worshipable by all. There are many examples of women who attain the supreme achievement of pure devotional service to the Lord, such as the wives of the Vedic Brahmanas, who due to the demands of bhakti ignored the orders of their less advanced husbands to serve Krishna. In the Kali Yuga, also a result of the blessings of Haridas Thakur, a prostitute was transformed into a renowned Vaishnavi, and many great devotees went to seek audience from her in order to receive her saintly association. So, yes, great personality. And as I was saying with the Caitanya Caritamrita, you hear all these different names, but then when you actually do a bit of research and go a bit deeper into who they were, you can find out they were very, very exalted Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. So we heard about Anantaracharya, a little bit about Pandit Haridas, who will read more of his qualities coming in the next few verses. And also we're hearing about Sachi Devi or Gangamata, a great Vaishnavi. So a lot of nectar in these purports, isn't it? And you can explore and go deeper into it. All sorts of nectar in there. Does anybody have any questions or points? Or anything they'd like to add?
Is there any sense as to who takes note of these dreams that the devotees had? Like, they've written them down themselves, or is someone kind of, I don't know, psychically?
Presumably it would be recorded somewhere. I know that with the pastimes of Gangamata, it was written at the start. I had a reference where the research came from, if you hold on a sec. It says, more is learned about Gangamata's holy life from Hari Das's Gaudiya Vaishnav Abhidhana, and in more detail from Sundar Randana Vidya Vinod's Shrik Kshetra, where an elaborate account is given. So there must be some record given in these shastras and scriptures about these dreams that they were having. I know that I keep getting on a case about it. Gaura Shakti, her spiritual master, Jayapataka Swami, told her to write a book about dreams, devotees having dreams of Krishna. So he instructed her some years ago to write this book, and she hasn't done it yet, so I was getting on her case about it. That she's supposed to write this book about devotees recording their dreams of the deities. So if Gaura Shakti's listening, you know, get your book done. Any other questions or points?
You mentioned at the start Anantaracharya was originally the
Sudevi. Sudevi?
The disciple of Vaidacharya?
Gadadhar Pandit.
But you mentioned he was involved with Vaidacharya first.
Yeah, I think there was. It's explained. I did read that there was some connection he had with Advaita Acharya, but I think he actually ended up taking initiation from Gadadhar Pandit. Yeah, from what I understood from reading it. Yeah.
So I guess it makes sense if we think of that personality as also. If we think of Gadadhar Pandit is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's explained that obviously when Krishna appears, all his eternal associates appear with him as well. So all these personalities were appearing to be part of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So when Krishna appears, all the residents of Vrindavan come. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, they all come to be part of that pastime as well. I think I've explained before how Tamal Krishna Maharaj once asked Prabhupada that, we understand that when Krishna appears and all his associates come, sort of about when the pure devotee comes, do his associates come as well? And Prabhupada said, yeah. So Prabhupada confirmed that when the pure devotee comes and his associates come with him as well. Yeah. So anyway, we can stop. Shall we stop? Okay. All right. Shri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Ganga Mata ki, Shri Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami ki, Gaura Premanandi.